And perfect. Alrighty. First of all, a huge thank you to all of you for joining in at such an hour. I mean, I'm a mom, I got a little baby, so I know at this time getting on a webinar, it is a bit of a sacrifice as well to do that. So I really appreciate all of you for joining in. And thank you so much, Mohammed, David, and Tom for having me today. And I'm really looking forward to, just having this dialogue with you about the role of leadership in the future of work. So I have been in the leadership space for over a decade. And I normally say it's actually a privilege to be able to be in a leadership role in different countries and different continents, because you literally take the best of both worlds. So I'm very much at home in Kenya. I was born and raised in Kenya. And I've been living in Germany for the past, it's been such a long time, I think over 14 years. So, kind of taking the best of both worlds, it really shapes you as a leader. It really helps you to understand people in a way that that goes much deeper than the spoken and the written rules. So really, really happy to dive into the conversation with you guys today. So we're going to be talking about I just tried to structure it in such a way that the objective of the webinar is going to give us a good understanding of why is it important to talk about the future of work, or why are we actually talking about it, and also to look at the key drivers of change. So what is it that's really pushing us or making us as leaders and decision makers in our organizations to think about, to rethink and reframe what leadership and what strategies we need in our organizations, and also to understand how a human-centered lens through all the aspects of, or through the most important aspects of the organization, can be a fundamental winning point for every single organization that is trying to be relevant, that is trying to keep that competitive advantage, and that is trying to make sure that they are thriving. Because one thing for sure is we can't be sure if there are no more crises coming up, right? But what we can be sure is that we can be able to prepare our organizations in such a way that they are resilient regardless of what comes around. So we're going to look at the A.R.M.O.U.R of Leadership. It's a model that I created 3 years ago. And we're also going to look at the key future skills that we all need as leaders, as leaders within our organizations, to just make sure that we're creating those ecosystems where people feel comfortable and they can bring their whole selves to work. And then we're going to have the session where you can take it away, ask all the questions you got, and that's it. So Tom was kind enough to do an introduction. I just kind of put in a few stops that I've had. I mean, you can see that most of my career life was spent in banks. So understanding the financial world and understanding how to lead transformations and lead people in such a tough sector, I like to call it's a way of building a leadership muscle, regardless of where you find yourself, right? And after around 12 years of banking and finance, I founded a consultancy, the Interface Leadership, which was basically focused on a leadership and with the focus of how do we lead the whole person, considering the changes that are happening to the world today. And because of my work with the Interface Leadership, that's how Cassini Consulting came up to me. It is a technology and management consultancy in Germany that literally sits at the intersection point of tech and management. So it really felt at home to work with them, kind of have a broader impact and reach out to more people in this cooperation. So currently my work, I work together with Cassini Consulting to try and impact as many organizations as we can. So when you talk about the future of work, or before we even talk about the future of work, I like to think about it like this. Trends do come and go. And the beauty with trends is you get to decide, you get to choose and say, does this trend match my values? Does this trend match my organization or the vision that we're trying to follow as an organization? Or does it really match my brand as a person, right? So you get to choose. You can say, I'm going to jump on that wagon, or I'm not going to jump on that wagon. But the future of work is not a trend. It is not something that you get to choose and say, I'm just going to let that slide out, or I'm going to be a part of that. The future of work is definitely here to stay.
Natalie, sorry to jump in, Natalie. We're still seeing the first slide. Have you moved the slides on or not? I just didn't know.
I have.
Right. Yeah, we're still seeing the first slide. So they can't be moving for some reason.
Just give me a sec.
Check.
So which slide do you see right now?
We're still seeing your first slide with the boats on.
And
at least I am.
Do you see the second slide now?
No. Oh, do now.
You see an agenda.
Yeah,
Thank you for jumping
moved.
in. Thank you for jumping in. And the introduction, and here, this is where we should be. So this is what you should
see the triangles now. The tunnel.
Great. Thank you. Please jump in when text trying not to do what we want it to do. So anyway, perfect. Just a sec. Perfect. Alrighty. Okay. So we're talking about why the future of work is important and why it's not a trend. Because whether we like it or not, the events of the last 3 monumental years, they have fundamentally changed who we are as a people, and they've changed the essence of how we work and how we lead. So in order to create a future, I believe we must understand the past. And thus, before we even try to define what the future of work could be, it's important to understand how we got here and the different industrial revolutions that have led up to the 4th industrial revolution, which we find ourselves in, which is actually forcing us to rethink, to redefine, and to reshape the way we work and how we want to work in the future. So I put a little timeline for you just to kind of, bring that history back. We start from the first industrial revolution that was, which was basically in the 17th century, right? This is where the steam engine was created, and which gave access to, with the steam engine, the trains were created, which literally gave access to infrastructure and resources that we had never seen before. And if you look at history, the first industrial revolution went over a period of 80 years before we got into the second industrial revolution, which was with the development and advancement of electricity, steel, and oil. So, and with that, we got into the manufacturing era where we were able to manufacture things, we were able to mass produce things. This brought in factories, this kind of rechanged how organizations worked and how people collaborated when they were working. And then it took another 50 years until we got to the third industrial revolution, which most of us actually think that we are still in it. And that is the digital revolution, and the third industrial revolution being the computer or the digital revolution. It was basically the mainframe. This is where the mainframe computing was created. And this is where the internet was also developed. And we also saw what the internet did to all of us. It revolutionized a lot of industries. It brought access. It gave a lot of visibility to other countries that were never visible until that time. And according to Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, the 4th industrial revolution should have started at around 2016, and it builds up on the computing revolution, and it is characterized by the fact that we're able to fuse technologies across the physical, across the digital and biological domain. And this is something that has not been this is something that was never, it was never done before. We never had enough computing power. All right. And you see, so it's kind of important to really understand the revolutions that have happened and the timelines between the revolutions to understand why it is important to talk about the future of work and why it's not a trend, and why we all must literally be getting serious about what does it mean for organizations and what does that mean for us as leaders and decision makers. So, and with that understanding, please tell me you're seeing the next slide. Great. Now it's working.
Yeah, we are now.
Now it's working. So it's all about defining what the future of work means in the 4th industrial revolution, right? And we see that this is what the future of work is. Basically, we decision makers, we leaders, and we, the workforce of today, we are trying to anticipate what kind of jobs are we going to be working in tomorrow? What kind of skills do we need so that we continue to be relevant for the market tomorrow? And what kind of ecosystems do we need? How must these organizations be built up that people can bring their whole selves to work, that people can focus on innovation, people can focus on creativity? I mean, we know the more we are implementing AI, robotics, and a lot of technological advancements in our organizations, we are actually taking away the mundane tasks and giving people time to really focus on the essence of humanity, and that is creativity, time to create, time to innovate. And so how are our organizations supposed to look like that people can actually be so free that they bring the brilliance to work? And so basically, this is a question that we are trying to answer today. And it's also important to understand the key drivers that are pushing for this change, right? And I think we've all seen over the last 2.5-3 monumental years, there have been the four major key drivers of change that we've had. The first one being the digitalization, which gave rise to the digital tools, the platforms. We see globalization opening new markets. We're seeing trade increasing between different countries across the globe. We're seeing access to infrastructure in a way that we didn't have it before. We're seeing through communication, access to media, access to healthcare, access to resources in a very different way than we had a couple of years ago. And we're seeing how technology is transforming how we are working. I mean, what I mentioned earlier, with a lot of technology taking over most tasks that were taken over by humans until now. And suddenly we have more time and more capacity to focus on really being productive, focus on really innovating, being innovative, and focus on creating. And also the last point being the pandemic, which was the major accelerator to everything that is happening. I mean, historically, we see that pandemics, they have a way of forcing humans to break with the past and reimagine the world with a fresh new perspective and a fresh new lens. And you could see that the way the pandemic accelerated the digital transformation with the shift towards remote work, the shift towards hybrid working, towards video conferencing, how we socialize, how we interact with people. I mean, today, you're able to do business with Mali without ever setting foot in the country, something that you may not have done in the last, as before the pandemic. Because before the pandemic, we always wanted, meet people, have that handshake and have that personal meeting before you're able to sign huge contracts with countries. So we're really seeing that the pandemic really, really accelerated to the changes that we're experiencing today, giving rise to the knowledge era. And as you can see, to be able to anticipate what can come, to be able to build our organizations in a way that we are resilient, we need to invest in our workforce. We need to look at our people we need to look at people for who they are, and we need to give them the tools and the resources that they need in order to be able to develop that resistance that we need for thriving organizations. So, and if you could just, if you could think about the slide that I showed before with the different timelines, the timelines that we had of the industrial revolutions, you could see we had 80 years, we had 50 years, we had 40 years. But what's making this particular one quite interesting is the pace of change. I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people are always saying, hey, things are moving so fast, everything is moving so fast. And I'm always saying, in Sophie Limbon's words, the world will never move as slowly as it has before. And this is the focus. This is what we should really be understanding, that the way we know the world, the pace of which things have been moving, which was slow, it's never coming back again. Things are just going to get faster and faster and faster. And you could see that when the pandemic was happening, I really do believe that I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people in this call today. When we were watching businesses close down, we were watching economies shrink, we were watching the health systems get heavily impacted. the one thing that really stood out, regardless of where we were in the world, was the humanity, right? People really started asking themselves those tough questions. Have I been living right? Have I really been focusing on the right things? Have my priorities been right? You know, having that freedom being taken away from us, it literally made us reconcile with who we are as a people. And you could see a lot of connectivity. People are looking for a lot of connectivity. This literally gave the boom to platforms like LinkedIn. You know, you saw the shift even happen on LinkedIn. It went from being a very cold, corporate platform to a more connected platform where people are looking to connect with human beings and not people with titles. And this gave rise to, and all these changes, the asking the questions of who am I in this world? What is my role in this new world? Or how do I want to continue living my life moving forward? It gave rise to a workforce that is so value driven and so focused on purpose. And you say that is why when you look at the workforce today and you compare to the workforce before, people today, they don't really care about the organizations that they work in. People can literally choose where they want to work in. Before, if you look at the older generation, if you look at our parents, for instance, they were grateful to have a job. You know, you give them a job, they're thankful to have a job. You just tell them jump, they're going to ask you how high, right? But today, the market belongs to the talent. People can literally choose where they want to work. And these are those changes that are happening in the society, how people think fundamentally, how people take, which are forcing companies to have to rethink their strategies through a human lens in order to be able to keep talent, in order to be able to continue being attractive in the market. And you see, and this is the major shift that has caused a lot of organizations to really focus on how do I make my company welcoming? How do I make this company welcoming for Tom, for Natalie, for David, so that I can be able to keep the talent and I can be able to keep these people who are funneling the brilliant ideas to me. And so when you look at so to understand the role of leadership today, as decision makers and as global leaders, we need to look at organizations through two aspects. And the first aspect is basically to ask yourself, what do these trends and what do these changes mean for me as an organization, as a whole organization, right? And that is definitely in terms of your competitive advantage. It's about asking yourself, how am I positioning myself on the market? What does my employer branding look like? Is it authentic? Because people today, they want to work with organizations that are authentic, organizations that they can relate with. People, investors, they want to invest in companies that are literally sustainable, companies that are very conscious of their positioning in the society, and companies who are conscious of which are trying to leave a positive impact in the society as well. And you see resilience when you talk about looking at your organization from a very resilient angle. It's about understanding that there are going to be probably shocks coming in the future, but we want to be able to know that whatever happens, we can proactively react to that and not be caught off guard like we were caught off guard in the last 3 years ago. So when you look at your organization from that aspect, is what do these changes really mean for me as a company? You find that the companies that we've been working with for the past around 1.5 years, they've been focusing on realigning their values to who they are. They're basically asking themselves, are we the people we were 3 years ago? The values that we have on our marketing promises, are they really the values? Are they reflecting where we want to go and the vision that we've had to redefine, we've had to reframe because of the changes that have happened the past 3 years? So when you look at your company from the whole organizational aspect of asking yourself, How am I positioning myself? Am I authentic enough? Am I resilient enough? And are my values in alignment with the vision? Are my values in alignment with the business or business objectives? You're already winning. And then you take that a notch higher. You ask yourself as a company, what do these changes really mean for my specific employees? What do they mean for Natalie in C-level, and what do they mean for Natalie in printing? And like that, you align that to the changed needs of the employees, because our needs changed. I mean, I know that the way I look at work or how I work is totally different from the way I worked 3 years ago. And everybody that I talk to, in one way or another, the last 3 years, they changed us at our very core. And because we want to be aligned with our values, we want to make sure that what we're doing is in total alignment with who we are as a people. I mean, there's a German word I really love. I couldn't find a perfect translation in English. In German, it's called Lebenszeit. Lebenszeit. It means a Lebenszeit means like your lifetime, the time that you're living, right? And it's basically asking yourself, am I doing the right things with my Lebenszeit? Am I doing the right things with my time? And so when you think about it from a working aspect, most of the people today, this is the question they're asking themselves. At the end of the year, have I really lived my life in a way that is in accordance with my values and the person that I want to be? And that is why most of the workforce today, they're following impact. They want to be impactful. They want to have a purpose that they follow. And this is the language that really speaks to a lot of people, especially when it comes to positioning yourself as an organization that is interesting for people in this era. And then you find that for organizations to keep up with the pace of change and to continue to position themselves at a competitive advantage, they really need to make concerted efforts to transform 3 key aspects within the organizations. And that is the structural aspect, the cultural transformation, and the skills. These are the 3 points that really need to be transformed or need to be looked at in organizations today. So when you're talking about the structural aspect, you're talking about what processes do you need? Do you need to be moving to more agile models of working? Do you need to rethink your processes? Do you need to install new ones? Do you need to readjust them? Do you need to tighten them up a little bit? How are you leveraging the digital technologies that you're having? So structure. And then you also have to think about the cultural aspect of it. You need to create an ecosystem, a culture within your organization that pushes for agility, that encourages people to be innovative, that encourages adaptability. And you also need to think about skills transformation. But when you think about the skills transformation, you really need to think about it in two aspects. First of all, the leadership needs to be developed, also the leaders need to be developed. And then the talent needs to be developed. So I'm talking about the development that we know before the pandemic, right? We need to keep on developing our people. We need to make sure that they're getting skills. So when we talk about upskilling and reskilling, this is being very intentional and being very specific after understanding what the changes, what the trends mean for your industry, what the trends mean for your company, and then being very intentional about which skills do I need specifically? How do I need to upskill my people specifically for this particular industry, for this particular trend, to make sure that in 3 years, 2025 is like 2 years from now, according to the World Economic Forum, by 2025, 60% of the workforce globally would need to have reskilled themselves and upskilled themselves. So to just literally make sure that the pace at which things are changing, the pace at which technology and AI is forcing us to really rethink new jobs. I mean, I don't really have to say much, but when you talk
Natalie,
about...
sorry to interrupt again. I think the slides have stopped again.
And are they working? Is it working
We're
now?
still... Oh, yeah, okay. That's moved on now. It got stuck on the egg timer one.
Okay.
Apologies for interrupting.
No, don't worry. I'm grateful for that, because my world is perfect here. My slides are working. So you really need to tell me when they're not working. Thank you very much for that. So, Yeah, so talking about the three transformations that need to happen in organizations for the three transformations that need to happen in organizations for you to be able to really ask yourself those tough questions as a company. Do I have the right structures? Do I have the right culture? And do I have the right skills? And not just the development skills, but also the specific skills that I need for this industry to keep me afloat, to keep me relevant tomorrow as a company. And the beauty is, you see that all these three skills, they literally build upon each other, because when you have a structure, when you have processes and structures that work, it's easy to incorporate a culture. It's easy to build up a nice culture when the structures and the processes are working. And when you have a great culture where people really love to work, where people can bring their authentic selves to work, it's easy for people to literally focus on funneling the brilliant ideas to you and developing within your organization. And they're not really focusing on who's the next best job and where do I need to go next. So these are like the three transformations that I would encourage, for everybody who has a company or in a decision-making role to really look at within the organization and just ask yourselves, have we done something in these three transformations? So moving forward, I really hope you're able to see my slides. You should be able to see the transformation slide right now. And the next slide is the challenges. Perfect. So when you're trying to make a cultural shift, or when you're trying to have any transformation within the organization, in the past 2 years, we have been experiencing, these are the major 7 challenges that we have experienced when we're working with companies. And we do work with global companies. So this is not just a German issue. It's not just an African issue. It's global. These are global problems that we've been able to put together for the past 2 years. So when it comes to transformation, when it comes to organizational transformation, you find that it's difficult to change traditional mindsets, because historically leadership was top down. It was always command and control. So and leadership was always strong leadership was deemed cold and distant, and just don't show any vulnerability, don't show any authenticity. You have to put on that mask, right? This was glorified as tough leadership. But now today we are telling the same CEOs, we're telling the same C-level leaders, we're telling them, hey, we need more personality. You need to show more of yourself. You need to show more of yourself to the people. And a lot of leaders are struggling with this because historically you were told, as a strong leader, as a great leader, you have to have the last word. You got to have the last say. And now the way the work is changing, the way the leadership landscape is changing, people within the organization is a people's business. It's everybody's business. People want to be part of the decision making. They want to feel like their voices are heard. They want to feel like they're being seen, and they want to feel valued for their contribution. So this is one of the major challenges that we face, changing that mindset, that traditional mindset from top down to bottom up. And then for any transformation to happen, you really need insights. You need insights from the people within the organization, because we know that culture, these are the lived experiences of people who work in companies, right? And so for anything to change, for anything to be better, people need to open up. They need to tell you where the pain is, where the pain points are. But most organizations, they lack psychological safety. And if you do not have psychologically safe environments where people can actually tell you the truth, where they can tell you the truth about where the pains are and what is not working, you will never get the right insights and the right input to build the right strategies that you need. So it makes a lot of sense to make sure, it is so important to make sure that we are building cultures, or we are having cultures where people can speak their truth without being afraid, without the fear of repercussions, or without being afraid that that it might affect my, the performance revenues at the end of the year, or it may affect the bonus payments at the end of the year. And then, of course, we do have the natural, our human nature. We were not born for change. We naturally resist change. So this is an aspect that we should not underestimate, just the human human natural resistance to change. So this is also one of the biggest challenges that we face when we are doing the organizational transformations in companies. And then you find that there's also a lack of a robust change management. Why? Because a lot of people or a lot of leaders, they understand or they think that change management is cultural transformation, or change management is transformation, but it's not. Change management is a tool. Are my slides still working?
We're on the maze slide with the picture of the maze. Great,
perfect. God, I'm really sorry, guys. I'm really sorry about the slides, but we're getting there. So change management is a tool that helps you through the transformation. Change management is a tool that literally helps you get from point A to point B, that helps you put the transformation into a framework, into a process, and makes it a little bit tangible for a lot of people. So, and a lot of managers, they really confuse that. You have like a nice program, you do the checklist, and I've done that, but that does not translate automatically to a changed mindset or a changed culture or a changed lived experience for the people within the organization. And also, it's quite difficult to quantify the progress of human-centered lens. That is quite difficult to quantify that. And a lot of leaders or a lot of organizations, they don't bring the patience that you need to be able to see these changes, because when everything is fine, they are ready to work with every strategy that we bring into place. But at the end of the quarter, when you notice that the quarter results are needed, and then people need to tighten up the results, hey, we need more sales, our sales are not moving on well, it's so easy to fall back to the older patterns of working and to the older patterns of leadership instead of pushing through with the new strategies or the new ways of working that we bring into organizations. And also, one thing we also see is a lack of commitment to putting the human at the heart of strategy. And this is normally as a result of, and again, as I said, when the sales are a bit tight, or the company is struggling a little bit, or they're struggling to meet those margins, you really notice how quickly these strategies get kicked out of the window, and they say, hey, I just need the results for this month. Let me just get the results in the month. And then next month, we're going to continue again on such a transformation. But transformations are not things that you can just pack up, use, and then pack it back again. It has to be an ongoing process, even when stuff is tough. And if you really want to know that your transformation is working, it has to be able to serve you even in the hardest times within your organization. If the transformation is not serving you, then something is wrong. Somewhere you need to go back, reiterate, and just change a few things. So and then you find that in the end, the most important thing about trying to put a human-centered approach to the key aspects of the organization is basically always trying to take a stakeholder approach, trying to maximize the results, trying to maximize the return for all the stakeholders, because when everybody who's involved, when the workforce, the leaders, when everybody who's involved understands their role in the bigger picture, understands how their contribution pays in the bigger picture, you pretty much have a situation where everybody is pushing for your success, because they know that their success depends on your success, and your success depends on their success, right? Which literally reminds me of a philosophy that we have in Africa. Some of you may have heard it, and some of you probably not. It's called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African philosophy that means I am because we are. It's basically the understanding that we do not exist in isolation, that we exist through and from others. Like my actions today, they affect you, they definitely affect the other person. So if you're able to look at the organization. When you're making decisions within a company, you know that my decision today is affecting this department, is affecting that department, is affecting everybody because we're all connected. It is a beautiful way of really bringing that stakeholder lens to all the key aspects of the decisions that you need to make or that need to be made. And also, it never hurts to have everybody working towards your success, because that is how you keep everybody, motivated and working towards the same goal. So, and with that, of course, you will have employees who are more motivated. The productivity is high. You have more engagement from all parties. And the A.R.M.O.U.R of leadership. So, the work that we do, the work that basically that I do is rooted in a leadership model that I created around 3 years ago, and it's called it builds up on 6 principles, and what the A.R.M.O.U.R basically does is it's a model that is kind of a response to the changing leadership landscape. I remember when I created it, that was just when the pandemic had begun. And I was, it was that moment where you're thinking, how can I be a part of the solution? Because a lot of people, they always need a form of an anchor and a framework to fall back to. So when I'm doing a transformation, and sometimes, you do your steps A, B, C, and then by the time you get to D, you kind of, you lose track of where you are. It's always good to have an anchor where you can always fall back to just make sure that you're really going through the process. And basically, this is how the A.R.M.O.U.R of leadership came about. And notably, the A.R.M.O.U.R was nominated last year as one of the leadership transformation models in Germany. Well, we didn't get the major prize, but we made it to the top 3 in Germany. So it kind of, this nomination and this recognition really underscores the significance and the importance of the framework, which I'll show you right now. So, and this is the point where I really hope you see my screen. Looks good. It builds on 6 principles, and the first principle is authenticity. So when you look at companies today, let's just talk about before the pandemic. If you looked at many corporate pages, there was a way corporates could speak, right? It was always very, how do you say that? How do you say that in English? It was very corporate-y. I don't even know if that word exists, right? It's very corporate talk, right? It was extremely figured out. It was extremely, it was not cold, but it was very corporate. There was just no personality. That's what I was looking for. There was no personality to organizations when you would listen to how organizations could speak, right? But today, you're noticing that a lot of organizations are even paying for corporate influencers. They're trying to show the authentic part of organizations. They're trying to show the CEOs in their private homes. They're trying to show a human side of what these organizations are. In a lot of organizations, you're going to see, they're going to show you behind the scenes. This is what it looks like in our offices. This is what it looks like when we're having our break rooms and stuff like that. So you notice that a lot of people today, they want to work in organizations that they can relate to. We want to invest in companies that we relate to as humans, and not as, because the market return is not only measured by shareholder value only. We want to really understand that this company, that we want to understand that the marketing promise on their website is exactly what they are living at the end of the day. So a lot of organizations need to figure out, how do I position myself authentically in a way that I'm able to attract the right talent? I'm able to attract people who can actually come and bring their authentic selves to work. So that is why authenticity is very, very important. And when it comes to authenticity, what we do with companies is we work with them to redefine their vision and their mission and their values. Are we still the people that we were 3 years ago? Are we still on course? Are we still projecting that what we want to project to society? And how does our work, how does our business model how does our business model bring us returns, bring us profit, but at the same time is a force for good? How are we leaving a positive social impact with what we're doing? And then the second principle is resilience. Resilience is the ability to, to be able to adapt to pressure, right? Seeing pressure and seeing adversity as opportunities. And for that, you need a very resilient workforce. You need to make sure that you understand where people in your organization, where they are in their resilience journey, so that you're able to take them along to make sure that you're not leaving people behind. So it is quite important to really understand where you are as a leader in your resilience journey, and where your workforce is, and where you need to meet in the middle, so that to make sure that you really are creating a resilient workforce and a resilient organization. And then the third principle is mastery. So when we talk about mastery is basically understanding that there are specific skills that we need in order to continue being relevant. So this is where we go deep into upskilling and reskilling. So what skills do you need to continue being relevant for your industry and for the problems that you solve for your clients, and basically doing a very bespoke analysis of what do you have in your organization, what are you lacking, and closing that gap. What digital platforms do you need to basically upskill and reskill your people? So mastery is basically coming up with a knowledge strategy that ensures that you are building up the muscle for tomorrow, when in terms of skills and in terms of knowledge for peak performance. And then ownership. This is so important, especially today when most of the workforce, a lot of people work from home. So working from home or hybrid and remote working is just the new normal today, right? So, but for it to work, there's a way we need to identify with our organizations as people, right? When I'm sitting at home, when I'm working from home, if I don't identify with the organization that I'm working for, then I'm basically doing my time, giving in the 2-3 hours, and that's it, right? Because you can't be able to see what the people are doing at home. You just have to trust that they understand the vision of where we are going, and regardless of if they have a role to play, they're also accountable to delivering the results that are needed. So ownership really pays a lot to this self-awareness, self-leadership, and identification and understanding, regardless of the role, how important you are and how important your contribution is to the whole picture, of the organization. And this is quite an important skill to make sure that the workforce, this is important to make sure that people within the organizations really identify with you. But they can't identify with the organization if you're not authentically reflecting the values that you're promising, the values that are on your marketing promise. And if they don't have the tools necessarily, the tools and the resources to be able to build themselves, to build their resilience, it's quite difficult to get to ownership if you've not worked through all the other principles. And then understand is quite important, especially now that the world got really small. We need to be able to understand how to communicate across borders, across nations, and interculturally as well. One thing is, with the interface leadership, I was really focused on hiring talent from the continent, for instance. Yeah, why? Because the digital tools and the technological advancements, they have given visibility to countries, they've given visibility to talent that for 3 years ago, 5 years ago, would never have taken part in the digital economy that we're having right now. So if you're not able to really understand how to communicate cross-culturally, internationally, it can be very difficult to work with people who are not like you, or people that you don't really understand. And a very simple thing, Germans are very direct and very straight, right? So, what a German tells you, like literally, that is it. But when I talk to the British, for instance, I'm always trying to understand, I'm always trying to think, is that really what they're telling me? Or, there's a lot of diplomacy in the language. You've got a very colorful way of packaging things, which is not very direct. But so somebody really has to understand how to speak or how to listen to a British person speak in order to get that meaning, that hidden meaning, that unwritten, unspoken message behind the message. So, and if you don't really understand these nuances, it's so difficult to lead or to work in this era, because teams have become so international and so global today that it is a huge skill, and it is an advantage if you're able to really have some bit of intercultural competencies to be able to navigate the global landscape that we're having right now. And then the last principle is respect. And honestly, I do feel like this is the ribbon that ties it all together. Respect, it's all about respecting people for who they are and where they come from. And this is where diversity comes in. It's about understanding and accepting difference, accepting the presence of difference, and figuring a way on how to leverage that, because a lot of organizations, they get stuck in defining, they get stuck in definition. Here we got to define diversity. What does that mean for us? We are far beyond, we should be moving beyond definitions of what diversity is by understanding who the people in our organizations are and how we can leverage the brilliance and the intelligence for the benefit of the company and also for their own benefit. How do we bring these people? How do we support them that they can be able to develop? So respect is basically understanding and knowing that diversity and inclusivity, these are two coins, these are two sides of the same coin. And you need to understand how that works fundamentally so that you are able to be able to get the full productivity or the full fruits of what diverse talent is able to bring to your organization. So these are the 6 principles, and the beauty of the A.R.M.O.U.R of Leadership is you can use it at an organizational level, or you can literally use it in your individual leadership. You can build up these principles in your own leadership strategy, asking yourself, am I being authentic enough as a leader? Do I understand my leadership anchor? Am I showing, how am I leveraging authenticity? Is it just for rapport, or is it just for really creating great teams for myself? You can literally work that on your own personal level. Where am I in my resilience? Do I need support? What do I need? Mastery, where am I with my skill sets? What do I need so that I can be the best leader? I can be the best decision maker for my teams as possible. So you can literally use it in your own individual leadership or at an organizational level through every single lens of every single decision that you're making for the strategies that are supposed to position your organization for success. And then last but not least, I strongly believe that leadership happens at many, and at any level. You don't need a leadership title for you to lead. You don't need to have a particular title for you to lead or for you to be able to understand who people are and help them discover their brilliance and just make them better, give them the resources and the tools that they need so that they can be better, because the better the workforce you have, the better results that you have as a company. So when you talk about the future skills, the skills that we all need, or which are important to have, you can look at them through the lens of the different key drivers of change that we've had. So when you look at digitalization, for instance, for that, we need to make sure that we got digital literacy and a bit of creativity in how we work. We need to be able to understand data and how to interpret that. What does that mean? And we need to be able to we need to be able to adapt, and we need this mindset of continuous learning. And I believe, well, I'm not an Agilist, but I do believe that continuous learning is like the core of any Agilist. You say continuous learning and continuing to be better in everything that you do. And when you look at globalization, you definitely, if you're going to be navigating an intercultural environment or space, you need to make sure that your communication is on point, that you're able to communicate with people who are different from you, with different cultures, different mindsets, and an understanding of the global economy, what is happening in the world, and how is that affecting our organizations? Whatever happens in Africa, for instance, how does it affect the European economy? Whatever is happening in Ukraine and Russia, how is it affecting us? Whatever is happening in the US, how is it affecting the German market? So you really need to be able to understand how these factors could eventually affect you as an organization, either positively or negatively. And then you need to be able to have a plan of how you're going to react to that when needed. And also, it's quite important to understand the dynamics of the global market as well, and also to have the knowledge of the different economies and the ability to identify and evaluate the opportunities that can arise from the fact that you are navigating different global spaces. And if you look at technology itself, technology just definitely needs technology literacy, right? What do I need? How technologically savvy do I need to be in my industry and in the position that I have? Critical thinking and problem solving, definitely important. And be curious, keep on being curious, keep on learning the new technology. How is that affecting my work, and how can that support me so that I have more capacity to be able to focus on what essentially we humans were actually created for, and that is to create things, to create new ideas, to create stuff. And also, when you look at the pandemic, it really brought, it really highlighted the importance of skills like resilience, flexibility, digital skills. How do I move around with the digital tools that we have? I mean, you guys have clearly seen today I've been having issues with this Zoom call and my slides and all that. So how do you deal with that when things like those happen? No? Emotional intelligence, empathy. People are going through a lot. We might not see it on the surface, but there is a way that the pandemic really, it left a print on a lot of people's hearts. A lot of people, either directly or indirectly, or within their families, family members, they lost businesses. A lot was lost in the past years. And so it's important to have a lot of empathy, to understand as leaders, how am I empathizing with my people, but how do I bring empathy and accountability into a healthy balance, because they both have to go hand in hand. And emotional intelligence, quite important, helps, especially when you're dealing with people who you might not really understand because of the diversity that they bring within the spaces that they come. And also self-awareness, constantly asking yourself, am I the leader I'm supposed to be? Really reassessing and asking yourself, am I doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing? And self-efficiency, as much as it is important and it is great to lean into the power of the collective, it's also important to be able to be savvy so that you're able to work, even in a remote setting, you're able to navigate the tech advancements that we're having. Because if you're not self-sufficient, there are chances that people are going to be left behind, right? And with that, that really brings me to my favorite quote, and that is, the digital transformation is beautiful to witness, and especially as it unfolds, but yet it makes it more urgent for human-centered approaches to be institutionalized in organizations, private and public. And also, I personally think it's a very exciting time to be alive in history, to be a part of the changes that are happening, because most importantly is we want to be able, in 50 years, we want to be able to say that, hey, we made the right decisions, we made ethical decisions, and we built our organizations, we set our organizations in a way that we're creating equity, we're creating organizations where people can really thrive for who they are. So basically, that is what That is what keeps me excited about the work that I do. That's what keeps me excited about being alive at this time in history, to just be able to write the history with every single person who is in this call with me today. Thank you. That's it. Got questions?
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you, Natalie, so much for that. Great talk, very inspirational, and hopefully everyone got a great deal from that. We have actually got some questions in the chat, so I'll fire them at you myself, Natalie. If you ask the questions as well, do unmute yourself if you want to elaborate. First one comes from Ashlyn. So, talking about this model, Natalie, how do leaders use this model to help them identify areas that they need to develop?
That is a very, very great question. Thank you very much, Aislinn. Okay, I think
from Ashlyn. Yeah, do unmute as well, Ashlyn, if you want to elaborate.
No, thank you very much. That is a very, very good question. So you see, the thing is, the A.R.M.O.U.R of Leadership gives you 6 principles, which give you space and time to really try to understand for yourself, which area do I need to work on immediately? I mean, we all know that leadership is a work in progress. So you're always working on something and you can't fix it all at the same time. So the fact that the principles, they build upon each other, and the fact that it always starts with authenticity. It will always start with you doing the deeper inner work, really asking yourself the hard questions, finding your leadership anchor. Am I really at the intersection of how I'm positioning myself as a leader? Is it at the intersection of my values and how I want to be known for the work that I do? So the fact that it starts with the authenticity, and with you starting to really define and ask yourself, am I really right? Am I really doing the right things? Am I really being authentic? It really gives you a good diagnosis. You can actually say a good diagnosis at the end of the day, to basically see what could be missing as you build up the principles moving on. I really hope that answers. I hope that answers your question. And for clarity, feel free to just dig in.
Yeah, it was more so from the fact that often the way that we think that we're portraying ourselves may not be necessarily how others can see us, because you touched on emotional intelligence, and obviously self-awareness is part of emotional intelligence, and maybe you just don't have that awareness of self. I was just wondering, is there anything that you recommend to leaders when you're working with them to help them see how they're coming across to others from authenticity perspective, you know, from each of them, the respect, like how do you encourage them to give feedback?
Yeah. God, you're asking such great questions. So there's something that I like to call the leadership anchor, right? The leadership anchor is basically, it's a very deep reflection exercise. This is where you literally think about 3 values which are non-negotiables, right? Like, even if I give you $100 million today, you can tell me, Natalie, walk away with your money. I am not doing that, right? And so when you've identified these 3 non-negotiable values, you're going to figure out how you want to position yourself as a leader, right? So do you want to be known as the super structured person? Do you want to be known as the leader who is not the motivator, the one who takes care of people, depending on how you want to be known? And then you could think about 3 adjectives and where they intersect. This is your strongest place of leadership, because it will have an authentic element in there, and it's going to have a very tough business aspect in there. So depending on how you're moving within that space, it's easy for you. I mean, I think you know this, as leaders, you cannot only be the 6 leadership roles that we have, right? Sometimes you have to be like, what is unternehmer in English? You have to be like a company owner. You have to be like a CEO. You have to think like a CEO. Sometimes you have to be a coach. You have to be like a role model. So there are these different roles that you always have to move within as a leader. And you can't be able to move authentically within these roles if you don't know your leadership anchor, if you don't know your strongest place where you can work from, right? So if you can be able to identify your anchor and then get an accountability partner, somebody who's going to give it up straight to you, somebody who is going to give you that feedback even when it hurts, you know. And this is how you kind of have that mirror. Am I really working towards being that person? And so, and again, it's so important to know your leadership anchor, because when you know it, there's some decisions that you're going to make as a leader, which might not be great for your team, but they will understand because you really have that relationship with them, because you are able to move within the different rules you have to move as a leader. But you can only do that authentically when your anchor is standing and when it is strong. And a lot of leaders, unfortunately, really, and I do have very seasoned leaders who still don't have that, who are still struggling to find the anchor. So I would really encourage every single person in here to try and find it. I have a resource to that. I'm going to forward it to Tom and David, and then they can just give you guys they will provide the resource to everybody who's in the group today.
Thank you so much. That's great.
You're very welcome.
David, go ahead.
So yeah, thanks very much for the talk. Really, really interesting. You talked earlier in the talk about companies and the fact that companies need to be more authentic and need to think about impact on society, and people are choosing companies based on these things. Mm-hmm. Have you got examples of where big companies are doing this really badly or doing this really well?
Let's talk about BlackRock, for instance, right? So what did BlackRock do a few days ago? You know, they literally issued a mandate that people need to be in the office 4 days a week. So do you think that is a sustainable way to move? Honestly, because if you look at their values, that they're putting on the website and how they are talking. Hey, you know, we value space, we value flexibility, and all that, and coming up with a mandate that people have to be in the office 4 days a week, and that is, it's just not, it's not aligned. And what we're going to see is BlackRock losing a lot of people, because people are used to the flexibility. The past 3 years, we've been able to work from everywhere. We have proven that you can be productive regardless of where you work from. So you can really just watch it for the next 2-3 months. You're going to see a lot of people. BlackRock is going to lose a lot of people, definitely, because of these mandates that they've put in. So for me, this is one of the companies that is actually not really being authentic, or not really authentically living out to what they're promising. So according to me, according to my opinion. So and a company that I feel, or that I really think does that well, and I'm not really saying this because currently I'm affiliated with the company, but Cassini Consulting AG, this is a company that literally has a whole thing which is called Lead to Grow within the organization. And Lead to Grow is being lived. It is being German. The German is literally killing my English. I'm looking for the English words. Lead to Grow is being lived by the CEO. He is walking the talk. He is saying, everybody's a leader. I am giving you space. I want everybody to have the space to be able to unfold in their brilliance. So he is living it. He is pushing people to really create that space for themselves, to define, how can I authentically be in this company, and how can I bring myself authentically here, and my skill sets, how can I, as we can wirken, that's the German word. And I've never seen that. I have never seen that lived like that in an organizational level. And that was actually one of the reasons why I actually jumped in on the Cassini ship, because of this authenticity, because that is an organization that I want my face attached to.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, David.
Great stuff. I'm just going to take one more from the chat, and I'll come to you in second, Mike, because I see you've got your hand up. So thanks for your hand up. This one comes from, I hope I pronounced your name right, Rinaldo. So how do you think leaders can support organizations to prioritize upskilling and reskilling talent amongst other pressing priorities? Many companies still struggle to prioritize this, even in the area of AI.
What we normally see is when the leaders themselves, they don't really understand that future work is not a trend, that it's here to stay and we need to be doing something about it, then it's difficult for them to take the budget, for them to really think about what knowledge strategy do we need. So first of all, it starts with the leaders understanding the time where we are currently in history. That is very important for them to really understand this is important. And the second thing, it's also when the leaders don't understand the trends and what these trends mean for the individual industries, then it's quite difficult to really see the need for that, right? Because organizations are still moving, we're opening our companies, we're going to work, stuff is moving, right? But I think we can all see what ChatGPT did. ChatGPT has been around for 3.5 months, 4.5 months, but you're seeing a great change, especially in content creators. The game has literally changed for them. So a good content creator will use ChatGPT to go to the next level. A bad content creator literally has lost a job. So, number one, the leaders, they have to understand the future of work it's not a trend. What it really means, what the trends mean for their company. And then also, first of all, you don't even have to think about which skills do I need. First of all, think about what skills do I have. First of all, just take a stroke and understand what skills do I have today in my company and what skills do I need to continue being interesting tomorrow. And that really gives you a great roadmap of what you need and eventually what, either if you want to work with a digital platform or if you want to do that through leadership transformation or talent development. So there are different solutions that you can offer in that area. But most importantly, the leaders, they have to understand the time. They really have to understand that the fourth industrial revolution is not joking. It's like things are going, it's a pace of change. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But unfortunately, in my opinion, within the next 2 years, a lot of companies are going to really wake up and notice, oh, bloody, why didn't we start getting active in 2023 or 2022? So that's the most important thing, in my opinion. And thank you, Ronaldo, for the great question.
Great, thank you for answering that. I want to come to you, Mike.
Thank you. So just on the upskilling thing, just a thought there, just before I get into my question, I would seriously recommend trying to convince your senior leadership, CEOs, et cetera, of the advantages of upskilling and the detriments of not upskilling. If they can see the advantage of them apportioning a portion of the budget and time, then they will understand and they will advocate, in my opinion, they'll advocate for upskilling. But if they can't see the value, they just won't. And as far as David goes, a company that's not working very well, Twitter, but I'll leave it there.
Oh.
Natalie, I've got a question for you. So you talk about being people-centric. So firstly, thank you for the presentation. Fantastic. You talk about being people-centric, and there's always a tension between being people-centric and being profit-centric. Mm-hmm. And I think surely the problem is when there's a misalignment between the two. So when you see that, putting people first leads to better profitability as opposed to just short-term profit in a company, I think that's probably better. The problem that I have with that is AI. So artificial intelligence has the capability of diminishing our labor force, as opposed to many of the other revolutions that we've had before. Mm-hmm. And so what do you say to your leaders who are potentially becoming convinced that, unlike the computer revolution, where you could have a shift in your labor force to becoming computer literate, mm-hmm. you now have a diminishment of your labor force because AI can replace people, and you'll get an ever-increasing number of people out of work. How do you compromise your vision of people-centric, with this idea that AI would diminish a labor force?
Mike, that is such a profound question that you asked right now. And the way I see it, and based on the conversations that we've had, AI will replace the human force. It will replace the work if we do not understand our role as leaders today. So if we as leaders are not really asking the same question that you're asking right now, so how do I position my workforce that AI, that AI can continue to serve them and not the other way around. That we're able to find ways of merging that together, like the capability that AI gives us, that it just accelerates and it, can you say augment? Can you say that?
It's a tool that augments.
It makes it better. God, German. Guys, I'm trying with the English. I'm really trying. It really improves. It improves our lived experiences and our work experiences in our companies. If we do not answer, or if we do not start thinking about what you've just asked right now as leaders, AI is coming. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my industry? What does that potentially mean for Natalie in printing? So because Natalie cannot stand at that printer anymore because she doesn't have a job, what am I going to do with her? So if we're not answering these questions right now, then we'll have that problem. Because what I see a lot of panels, or I see a lot of, a lot of people having these dialogues, and they're saying, hey, you know what? AI is great. It's giving us capability for us to be more creative and innovative. And I'm saying, yes, it will. But if we are not rethinking, if we are not defining our role as humans in an AI, in an AI world, then we have a problem. And this is why leadership has never been more important than it is today. Like every single leader, no, seriously, every single leader, we got to rise up, man. We have to figure out how to make sure that our people, they're still useful tomorrow. Because if not, AI is much faster in a lot of things.
So I think if I can paraphrase what you're saying, would you be saying that AI is a tool that we can use to cooperatively build stuff in the future? So it makes people more more efficient at their job. Their productivity may increase, but it doesn't make people superfluous. Is that what you're saying? When done right.
When built ethically, when given enough testing time, because we're not really testing it, are we? When you look at, let's go back to the 1940s, when the nuclear weapon was created, right? The whole world came together and they said, stop it. We will only use this for good. We're not going to use this to blow each other up, right? There was an international standard that said nuclear weapons can only be used like this and like that. We're not doing that with AI. So yes, if we're not coming as a world together, if we're not coming together and figuring out what standards do we need internationally, how do we deploy AI ethically? How can we define that in a way that remains human, that literally keeps us human people still interesting, then we're going to have a problem. Okay. And that is why we need to solve that problem today. That's why we really need to have these conversations today. Like every single decision maker, every single leader everywhere needs to really be thinking about, what do I do with my people in a way? How do I upskill them? How do I reskill them that they're able to deploy AI, that they're able to work with AI and not the other way around?
Yeah, so I think I only partially agree with you. I think in the short term, I agree that AI is a tool, and we'll have cooperation with AI tools, an ever increasing amount of cooperation using it as a tool. But I think that in the medium term, whatever that means, AI will make certain jobs absolutely superfluous. And the problem, unlike industrial revolution, computer revolution, it will diminish the labor force, making it so that you can't just learn a new skill and still have a job. I think there'll be a diminishing number of jobs available. And that really worries me, because eventually the profit-centric motivation for companies will kick in, and they will say it'll be far cheaper for us to replace this person with a partially sentient AGI rather than have a human being there. It's just the way it's going to happen.
I hear you. And again, if we are not doing something today, that's exactly what is going to happen tomorrow. So I hear you, totally hear.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen whether our leaders change or not. I'm not quite as optimistic in terms of people-centric approaches. which I'm glad you are. We need more people like you.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Sure.
Do we still have time that I can ask Mike a question? Tom, David? Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
So if you look at the United Global Compact with the sustainable goals until 2030, right? The 17 SDGs that they're going all over the world, calling for organizations and companies and saying by 2030 we want to create a more equitable world. In the way we want you in your organizations to really figure out what SDG aligns with who you are. Are you looking for equal pay? Are you looking for that? Don't you think that these are some of the measures that we are trying to put in place currently to make sure that we are on course by 2030? Because these are some of the conversations we were having at the beginning of the year in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and to say, where are we on our 2030 journey? So do you believe that this, like this, how do you call it? The thing is, these are not policies, but the efforts, the global efforts that we are making with, for instance, the Sustainable Development Goals to try and say, hey, this is what we're trying to push for by 2030 to reduce climate, to reduce climate change, to make sure that we're having equality, to make sure that we're having, we're reducing poverty and all that. Don't you think that that is at least something in the right direction?
So I think it's a complicated question. I think young people certainly are pushing a lot for 2030, and I think it's coming as a push from young people as a mass, probably even more so than my generation or people older than me, which is good. I think that we need to have that utopian or that view of what we would like the world to be like. But I think companies are motivated by profit and sustainability. I think that they, in a way, should be, because if they go under, so do the jobs for the people that work for them. And I think if there's another company who can do what you're doing cheaper because they've got artificial intelligence, then suddenly you become unviable as a company unless you change. And so I think capitalism is a driving force in some ways against that sustainability, but I think there's a social force driving for that sustainability. And that's a competing sort of set of factors. So I think people will continue to, and I apologize for using this term, but I think they will continue to do virtue signaling until such time as virtue signaling starts impacting their ability to do what they want to do. As soon as they can't go on holiday, but especially as soon as they can't feed their children, environment goes out the window, and so do other sustainable things. And whether that's the way it should be or not, I leave it up to the masses to decide.
Thank you. Thanks for answering.
Thank you for the question, Mike.
Can I just make one more very quick thing? Just in terms of respect, you've got respect there, you've got diversity and inclusion. If I could suggest putting the word equity in there, you talked about equity a lot, but definitely put it in there.
It is. I mean, when you look at respect, that the framework itself, it does have the equity, because what you're trying to do with that, you're trying to create an equitable economy. Actually, you're trying to make sure that everybody has a part in the whole pie. So basically, it is in the framework. Happy to share it in detail with you.
I've had a look at it, but the slides that you have now and that are echoed on other websites often do not include the word equity. And I think of the three words, equity to me is the most important.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for all the questions as well. Thanks, Natalie, so much for that incredible talk. I know you've got a very, very tired toddler that you need to put to bed. So I'll let you jump off now. We'll end questions there. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, Natalie. And I know everyone wants to show their appreciation as well. So thank you for joining Agile Northants this evening.
Hi there, Jeff Watts here. And like me, I'm sure you loved that session because it's another example of becoming great at Agile. We're proud to sponsor Agile Northants here at Agile Mastery Institute because, like us, the people of Agile Northants know that mastery matters. And we're on a mission to make Agile certification meaningful. We want to change the paradigm so that when people think of Agile certification, they think of a pathway of actual, real, deep learning over time. Not just learning good practice, but reflecting on that practice and tailoring the learning to the context of the learner. So at Agile Mastery Institute, we don't just offer 2-day classes. We offer at least 6 months worth of support, a combination of classroom, of coaching sessions, and community support. So you know that you will get some great practice content and theory and skills development, but also you will be able to direct that learning through your bespoke coaching sessions over the course of at least 6 months. This will help you in your role. It'll help your employers. It'll help your teams, and it'll help regain respect for Agile certification throughout the industry. So if you believe Agile certification matters, then come along to one of our cohorts. We've got licensed guides around the world offering flexible programs over time zones and cadence. Check out agilemasteryinstitute.com for your options. And I've personally got a few cohorts coming up where if you're quick and you use the code NORTHMASTERY, then you could get up to 25% off, but you have to be quick to get those discounts. If you've got any questions about any of it, how the pathways work, how it could work for you, how it could work for your organization, then just drop me a note and I'll happily explain more. But until then, keep on doing great Agile.